Well, let's get working on the trim that's going to go around the top. I'm going to take these little 1/4 inch wide strips and I'm going to place them up against that top. And I'm doing that because the face frame that we did vertically up and down makes a little step. And I wanted to have where the top matches the side of the bookcase to have, I wanted it to be even with that front face frame. And I'll show that closer later. Here's 2 little teeny tiny pieces, and I'm going to stack these on top of that piece that we just put on either side. And I'm doing that just to kind of, again, step that trim down and not have too big of a gap between, layers to layers. So I'm going to do that on both sides. Now I'm going to take another piece of that little skinny 1/8 inch, 1/16 inch. It's skinny. 1/8 inch? I think it's 1/8 inch. Yeah, it's 1/8. The width is, the depth, like how wide it is 1/16. And I'm going to glue that. I know it's confusing. I'm going to glue that across the front, and it will kind of hide the workings of what I just glued on there, and it marries the top with the bookcase, the rest of the bookcase. Here's another 2 little 1/4 inch pieces, and those are going to frame that top where we put that 1/4 inch cube trim. To build up, we need to cover that up. So it's basically we're building, we're covering, we're building, we're covering, and that will kind of smooth that out and make it look like a solid piece of wood instead of parts put together. So I'm going to put a piece on each side and cover up all those little seams and ends of pieces of board. And then I'm mucking around with it. I could do that for hours. Okay. And then I'm going to put another piece of that 1/4 inch skinny trim across the front to hide all the seams there. And then it will just look like, slabs of blocks of wood stacked on top of each other instead of parts, all Frankenstein together. And then we'll cover the top here in a little bit. Come on, Nick. Let's do this thing. Okay, I'm taping it all down because I'm going to be working on the other end on the toe kick, and I just didn't want, I didn't want stuff to be shifting and moving. That's never a good thing. So I just want it to dry in place. And more tape. Wow. Okay, so down to the bottom, we're going to do the trim. This is 1/2 inch trim, and I've decided to put a strip of the 1/2 inch trim along the very top of that toe kick base. And I'm just cutting, I do the sides first, because then the front piece that, the piece that goes along the front, it is long enough to hide the cut ends of these. And so that's why I do that. That's why I've been doing that on all of the face fronts that you'll see. I do the side pieces first, and then I hide those ends with the front trim. And then that way it doesn't look all pieced together as much, but it is. So on goes the glue. Making sure that's stuck down, because I'm going to flip that around and put the other side piece on, and we'll hide the seams from the toe kick base and the bottom of the bookcase. We'll hide that, and it'll just kind of make our base a little beefier, a little stockier, more substantial. And there I go, mucking around. Okay, and then see, this one will be long enough to cover the ends of those cut pieces, so you don't see all that. The less seams you see or gaps between trim usually is better, unless you have a bunch of spackle or caulking or something that you can smear in there. Sometimes it's better just to cut it a little long and cover everything up. And I'm just making sure everything is even. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some little scraps of trim that are the same depth as the trim I just put on, that 16th inch skinny trim. And these are going to be shims. And the reason I am putting shims on is because I'm going to put another piece of 1/2 inch trim all the way around, just like we did here, but it's going to be just below the trim we just put on. But I didn't want it to be the same depth. I wanted it to step out like, like a step, like trim steps out. So I think I'm taping it. Yep. Taping again. There you go. Yeah. Sometimes the wood doesn't want to stick, so you kind of got to, add some more glue and just tape it till it dries. And then I let those kind of dry. And you see now I'm putting on the little side pieces, and they have to be just a tiny, tiny, tiny bit longer than the ones that we just did because they step out. So like literally a 1/16 of an inch, Then I turn it around and I'm going to put the piece that I cut for the front, or am going to cut for the front, with scissors, because I couldn't be bothered to go, find anything else. And slap some glue on there. And I'm really only putting glue where the little under support shims are. And voila. Walla Walla, Washington. So you'll be able to see here, I'm going to stop the camera and pause everything and show you what we just did, since it's, it's kind of complicated. This is going to be skinny trim that's going to go over, see that seam right there between? So there's the bottom trim and that we just put on. There's the top trim. You see how it stepped out from each other? And then see that seam right there? The seam between the trim and the base. And there's some along here too. We're going to be covering that with the little skinny 1/8 inch teeny tiny trim. But I'm going to let the bottom dry a bit first. Okay, so here is the top of the top of the top. It's the top's top. And it is a piece of heavy chipboard because I ran out of wood again. So, and again, these are little shims because all that little trim work that I put around the top of the bookcase ended up just a 1/16 of an inch, just a hair lower than that middle. It was just a hair higher than that middle piece that we put in. So I don't know. I don't think it'd be that big of a deal because it's just a tiny little miniature bookcase. But I went ahead and put in those little shims so that it would sit nice and flush all the way across that topper. And I'm just going to eyeball it. And there I go, eyeballing it. And then I got to move it around probably. Yeah, there I go, mucking with it and moving it because, yeah, and this glue dries pretty fast. Okay, so now there is the bottom. And I'm going to, again, take that little tiny trim. And I will be just layering that across the top and the sides of the bookcase bottom, the base. So we can hide that little seam again. Just hiding the seams. And I went ahead and went side to side all the way to the end. And just like that. And then the little two side pieces, when I flip this around, I ran out. I had to grab another little piece. Sorry. So I'm just going to hold that up and just kind of mark it. I sometimes I measure, but I do better if I just kind of hold stuff up. So see where it's going to fit up against that front piece that we just put on? Both side pieces will look like that. I don't show both of those. I will later. I'm already painting. I think I lost a segment in there. I think there was an error, if I remember correctly. There's so many segments. So anyway, I'm just painting with a dark charcoal matte acrylic paint. That's all it is. And I have a big fat watercolor brush. I believe it's a size 9, maybe. It can hold a lot of paint, a lot of paint. And I just want to make sure that everything is covered. Everything is covered. So I did the back first and kind of let that dry. And then I went on to paint all the insides and the nooks and the crannies and made sure that everything was coated. And this paint actually did pretty well at coating everything. I did probably end up putting on 2 coats when all was said and done. I just kept kind of fiddling with it until I made sure I couldn't see any wood grain or, bare spots of wood or whatever. And I let that dry. And now I'm taking a wet or damp kitchen sponge with a scratchy on the back, little scrubby sponges. And what this does is it works away the paint, but it wears it away in a way that's different from sandpaper. So in some areas where I wanted a little bit more paint taken off, I did that first, that wet sponge, and I took off some of the paint. And now, like for the next, 10, 15, 20, 30, half an hour, 4 hours, I will be sanding. No, it didn't take that long. It's a tiny bookcase. But I'm sanding wherever I would think a bookcase that has been moved around a house and possibly from house to house, wherever that would get roughed up, wherever it would be handled, where it would get more wear on it, I don't know. And then just some extra little places that I thought looked good. And of course, across the front of the shelves, if you hit a place where you hit some of your adhesive where you glued everything together, you may have to sand a little bit more to get through that, because you want to get down to the bare wood. That is the key. You don't want to get down to just the adhesive. You want to get down to the bare wood, because this is what we're going to do. I take this distress stain, and this is Vintage Photo. And I'm just kind of running it all over the bookcase. At first, I'm running it over just where I sanded, and you can see wood. My point was to make it look like the wood underneath was like a dark walnut or a mahogany, and that it had been painted at one point. And this Vintage Photo really warms up the black and turns it into a different black. It just deepens it. I think it looks kind of cool. And then, like I said, it kind of looks like old mahogany or walnut wood is showing through the worn off paint. I really like this look. I think it's a cool look. So that's what I'm doing. And I'm just dabbing some on, rubbing it off. Dabbing some on, rubbing it off. And I messed around with it for, I don't know, probably at least a half an hour, at least. I got out some Q-tips and made sure that the stain was everywhere. And then, because it's me, I got out the sandpaper again, and just to put another layer, because it's all about the layers, I sanded some more off, and then I brushed it off with this paintbrush, all that gunky stuff. And then I'm just going to do another layer of the stain over that, and it just kind of deepens those areas a little bit more, especially if you don't think you sanded enough. Sometimes it looks like you sanded enough, but then when you get all the stain on it and the stain darkens what you sanded, then it's like, oh, it's not very visible, it's not very noticeable. So you just grab out the sandpaper and the stain and you just do it again. It's certainly not going to hurt anything. I like it looking a little grungy, a little dirty, a little worn, well, a lot worn. And I mean, this was my last step. This was it. Just grunging it up and making the raw wood show through. And yeah, I think it turned out pretty stinking cool. I hope you guys liked that. So here it is all finished, and before I turn on the the camera lights, the filming lights. I wanted to show you in some natural light because I think the lights kind of wash it out. So this is what it ended up looking like. I wanted you to be able to see the stained wood kind of coming through the black graphite color. There's the bottom toe kick. You can see how it steps out like I showed in that picture. And then you can see the tiny little trim that goes around the top to cover that gap that we had around the top. All the way around. This is what the toe kick base looks like. And if you can see, I got some paint in there. I tried not to so you can see it better. You can see the little scraps of wood that we glued in here inside before we glued this trim on so that it would step out and be, you know, a wider step, so it wouldn't be flush with the top one because I wanted it to step, you know, like trim. And then here is the top. Come on, camera. See if it's are we focusing? So here's the trim around the top. You can see where we added these little pieces so that everything would be even and flush and smooth as it went around the corner. It wouldn't have to step down. And across the front. And then over this side. I think it turned out pretty cool. So to me, this kind of looks like maybe an old library bookcase or, you know, something super duper old, right? Very kind of almost utilitarian because it's not, you know, fancy or anything. So I made this so that the books would fit. I'm just gonna grab a couple. So that the little books would fit, you know, right inside the spots here. So I think I accidentally made this bottom one like a winky bit taller, but it doesn't matter. They fit in all of them. So, and of course, you know, you might have your own miniature books or, you know, make them a different size. You can do whatever you want, right? But anyway, that was my goal, was to make them so that, you know, the little mini books could fit in them like I showed in the pictures. Let's see. I guess that is that for this mini build. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask, and I will attempt to answer you with some clarity and not muddy the waters up even more. I am not a carpenter, but I play one on TV. No, my family has a lot of woodworkers. My brother was a cabinet maker, and a lot of good friends are actually contractors and cabinet makers and furniture makers, and so I kind of picked up a few things, and yeah. But I like to wing it. I don't like to follow a pattern. I don't like to follow a plan. I just want to get something in my head and then figure it out as I go along. I'm also bad at following a diet. As soon as somebody tells me you can't have that, what's the first thing I'm going to have? And I'm going to have enormous quantities of it. It's that, because that's how I roll. So I'm kind of that way with directions and plans as well. With some things. There are always exceptions to the rule. You get something from IKEA, you probably should follow the directions and put it together. But if it's something like this, I don't know, I just can't. I'm really bad at following like sewing patterns too. I don't want to, I just get so bored just reading a wall of text with putting something together, and I'd rather just look at it and figure it out and cut out my own pieces. And I actually do better, I do faster if I try to figure it out on my own than if I try to read something that with instructions. Yeah, I was fun in school. My teachers loved me. No, I got my work done. I was a good student most of the time. When I went to school, I was a great student. I have not finished this yet as far as like put a finish on it, whether it's a polyurethane or a wax or, you know, varnish, whatever. It's not coming off on my hands or anything, so even that stain. So no big deal, right? It was just a matte acrylic paint, just a craft paint is all I used. But there are all kinds of things you can use. All kinds of stuff. All right, well, I guess that is it for today. I hope you had a good time building the little bookcase with me. And feel free to refer back to this video anytime you like and pause and look and, you know. And then I put on my Flickr page, and down below there will be a link to the Flickr page. If you want to download the papers or look at the you know, I kind of made a supplies list and kind of a schematic kind of a thing for detail-oriented people who aren't like me, who want to read instructions. I put that down there. And I think I've had some questions about people asking if they have to be a member of Flickr to download. And you know what? I have not been logged in several times, and I've gone there and like I go look at a picture or something and the download was available. So, but then sometimes I go there and it asks for my login. So I don't really know. I don't know. Maybe it's the type of link you have to follow. One is open and one isn't. If anybody has any info on that, please share. But Flickr isn't like it's not like a social media site. I mean, I guess you could make it that way because you can comment on photos and images, but it's basically just a place to dump pictures. And you can make them downloadable or you can make them not downloadable. So it's kind of just a repository for images. That's all I use it for. I've been on Flickr for, 15 years at least. And I've always just used it to, you know, a place to put photos for other people to see easily. Dropbox is fine, but, you know, then you have to install Dropbox. So, I mean, there's, you know, a blog is great, but then it still links you over to Flickr. So, yeah, at least mine does. All right. I guess that's enough rambling for now. I didn't even turn on the filming lights, so that is that. Again, down below there is a link to my workshop that will be in Dumfries in Scotland next May, almost a year from now. And I know most of the seats are taken, like 3/4 of them have already been taken, from what I've been told. So, but there are some left. So, but you have a year. Or maybe not. But I just wanted you to know in case you wanted to see the information on that down below. And I am going to be working on another project, so that'll be fun. It could be an utter fail and you may never see it. So there's that. So why did I even say anything? I'm compelled to just tell you everything. My room is a mess. It needs to be vacuumed and cleaned up, and because it's like a tornado went through here, or 2 or 3 tornadoes. I don't stop and clean up usually until I'm just done, unless it's like I can't move, because it messes with my mojo, throws off my groove. So I got to do that. But it's Saturday, and I also have to go work in the yard, and you know, I have to adult. So I will see you guys next week, and we'll do something fun, or we'll do something. I've got a whole list of things. I'll just pick one, and we'll just do something. Make a bookcase, guys. Fill it with some books or tchotchkes, or leave it empty. It could be one of those secret passage bookcases. A door to another world. All right, guys, have a great weekend, and I will catch you soon in the next video. Bye, guys.